aim to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Good evening, Amal Angeles. You're watching ASEAN in Focus on today's program.
The people of Thailand.
The head of Thailand's Progressive Move Forward Party says he's confident of becoming prime minister, despite junta-appointed senators saying they will block his appointment. Residents of Sichuan, the capital of Myanmar's Rakhine State, waited in line for rice and drinking water. The United Nations was negotiating with the military junta for access to areas that had been hit hard by Cyclone Mocha, which tore through Myanmar and Bangladesh on Sunday. Deadly heat waves in Bangladesh, India, Laos, and Thailand last month were made at least 30 times more likely by climate change, according to a recent study. And ChatGPT, the AI chatbot that can generate human-like text and answer questions on any topic, is now available on the Apple App Store. The head of Thailand's Progressive Move Forward Party says he's confident of becoming prime minister, despite junta-appointed senators saying they will block his appointment. MFP stunned observers by emerging as the largest party at Sunday's election, which saw a record turnout deliver a thumping defeat for army-linked parties who had run the kingdom for nearly a decade. Two more small parties joined the new coalition formed by MFP leader Pita Limjaroenrat, giving it 313 out of 500 seats in the lower house. Take a look.
Thailand have already spoken their wish, and I am ready to be the prime minister for all, whether you agree with me or you disagree with me. I have congratulated Kun Paetongtarn from Pheu Thai for her hard-fought campaign and have invited her to join the coalition. And that includes 5 more parties in the previous opposition.
ก็สนับสนุนนะคะเรื่องที่พรรคก้าวไกลได้เสียงข้างมากจากประชาชนก็สนับสนุนให้จัดตั้งรัฐบาลนะคะแล้วก็เราเคยทำงานในพรรคฝ่ายค้านร่วมฝ่ายค้านด้วยกันเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยการพิจารณาเป็นอันดับแรกๆของจากพรรคก้าวไกลเนี่ยก็เป็นเรื่องที่ปกตินะคะ
The coalition government in Thailand is facing a challenge to its majority in parliament. The Move Forward Party, or MFP, which is part of the coalition, has proposed to amend the country's laws against insulting the king. And this has angered the royalist military establishment. And a number of senators have said they will vote against the coalition's candidate for Prime Minister, Pita Limjaroenrat. The coalition is currently 63 seats short of the majority it needs in parliament, and it's unclear whether it will be able to secure the votes it needs to form a government. The Senate is a body of 250 members that was appointed by the previous military junta, and it's seen as being loyal to the establishment, and a number of senators have already said they will vote against Pita. But Pita played down these challenges.
As you can see that we have a lot of momentum and my coalition is taking shape. Whether we need more seats or numbers, that depends on the negotiation team that I have set up. That my coalition is firmly taking shape. There's momentum, there's progress, and we also have a very clear roadmap from today until the day I become Prime Minister.
The United Nations General Assembly has adopted a political declaration to renew commitment and accelerate the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, or DRR, up to 2030. The Sendai Framework, adopted by 187 member states in 2015, is the global framework for reducing disaster deaths and destruction. Take a look.
The Assembly decides to adopt draft resolution A/77/L70. It is so decided. This midterm review is our last chance before 2030 to collectively change course. Starting today, Let us ensure our choices are planet smart and people centered. Disasters know no borders. They are also connected to each other and to us through our actions and inactions.
Nothing erodes sustainable development like disasters, which can often destroy decades of progress in minutes. The failure to identify, prevent, and reduce risks before they manifest as disasters not only places the Sustainable Development Goals in jeopardy, it affects the most vulnerable people in the world first and worst.
As risks are left unattended, disasters are materializing faster, surpassing our ability to cope with increasingly dire consequences for people, livelihoods, society, and the ecosystems on which we depend. The imperative to realize the outcome, goal, and targets of the Sendai Framework is more important today than ever before.
8 years into its implementation, progress has stalled and in some cases reversed. The report on the findings and recommendations of the midterm review of the Sendai Framework found that there has been an 80% increase in the number of people affected by disasters since 2015. The cause of disasters remain high, with an average above $330 billion per year between 2015 and 2021, and there has been no commensurate increase in DRR funding. At the high-level meeting also attended Mustafa Kemal Kilik, a Turkey earthquake survivor who talked about his experience.
Nevertheless, we could not go back to our home. The aftershocks were continued, basic services like water and electricity were not available. So we lived in our car for a week.
In other news, Canada has urged Philippines to support ASEAN free trade talks and aims to become a strategic partner. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly expressed the importance of ASEAN centrality during a meeting with President Marcos Jr. Joly requested the Philippines' support in negotiating a free trade agreement with ASEAN and emphasized Canada's diplomatic expertise. President Marcos said that he's open to pursuing a strategic partnership with Canada, and he highlighted the many opportunities for cooperation between the two countries. Additionally, Canada intends to enhance people-to-people connections, including offering more scholarships and expanding cooperation in areas like agriculture. The two countries are approaching their 75th year of bilateral relations in 2024. Global temperatures are likely to surge to record levels in the next 5 years, according to the World Meteorological Organization. The UN agency warned that heat-trapping greenhouse gases and the return of the warming El Niño climate system will likely push temperatures more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels for at least 1 year between now and 2027, meaning the world will be off track to reach the target set by the Paris Agreement in 2015.
There's a 66% chance that we would exceed 1.5 degrees during the coming 5 years. We will see the warmest year on record during the coming 5 years once this La Niña phase is over. And this kind of variations, they are a combination of the specific surface temperature variations and the impacts of climate change. The most dramatic changes we expect to happen see in the Arctic, where we have already seen more than double the global warming taking place, and during the coming 5 years the estimation is that the Arctic temperatures would be 3 times the global averages, so we will see more dramatic impacts there. Climate change is proceeding, and once we extract this impact of natural variability caused by this El Niño variability, it's demonstrating that we are again moving in the wrong direction when it comes to increases of temperatures and also when it comes to changes in the global precipitation patterns.
On a more pragmatic and encouraging note, Leon Hermansen, a climate scientist from the UK Met Office, insisted that cutting greenhouse gas emissions will reduce the warming and will reduce these big impacts.
We need to emit as few as possible of the greenhouse gases, and any emissions that we manage to cut will reduce the warming, and this will reduce these big extreme impacts we've been talking about. So, it will be sad the day we pass 1.5, but it's not a reason to give up. We have to continue working out how we can reduce emissions of greenhouse gases as much as possible, even after that.
Meanwhile, deadly heat waves in Bangladesh, India, Laos, and Thailand last month were made at least 30 times more likely by climate change, according to a recent study. Record-breaking temperatures reaching as high as 44 degrees Celsius or 111 degrees Fahrenheit in parts of India caused heat stroke-related deaths, with Dhaka experiencing its hottest day in nearly 6 decades. Thailand and Laos also witnessed extreme heat, with temperatures hitting all-time national records. The study reveals that climate change increased the likelihood of these humid heat waves and raised temperatures by at least 2 degrees Celsius. It warns that without significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, such events will become more frequent and severe. The analysis further predicts that once-in-a-century heat wave occurrences in India and Bangladesh could happen every 5 years due to human-induced climate change, while for Laos and Thailand, similar extreme events may occur every 20 years if global temperatures rise by 2 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, Singapore reported its highest temperature in 40 years on Saturday, according to officials, as a blistering heat wave burns through large parts of South and Southeast Asia. Saturday's temperature of 37 degrees Celsius was the highest this year and matches the record for a daily peak record in April 1983, according to the National Environment Agency. It said the current warm and dry conditions are expected to continue. The agency said on Saturday, short duration showers are expected this week, which may help to moderate the warm temperatures, it added. May is normally one of the warmest months of the year, according to the NEA. Some schools in the city-state have already relaxed rules on uniforms over the rising mercury in recent days, according to local broadcaster Channel News Asia. In other news, a new report by the UN Environment Program, or UNEP, finds that plastic pollution could be reduced by 80% by 2040 if countries and companies make significant changes to their policies and markets. The report, which was released on May 16, outlines a number of policy and market changes that could be made to reduce plastic pollution. Take a look.
Just want to flag that our colleagues in Nairobi at the UN Environment Program say that plastic pollution could be reduced by 80% and result in the savings of over $300 billion a year if countries and companies make deep policy and market shifts using existing technology. The report recommends first eliminating unnecessary plastics to reduce the size of the problem, and then implementing the reuse, recycle, and reorientation and diversification of plastic products. The report also suggests ways to deal with the remaining plastic pollution legacy. It's available on the internet.
The report comes 2 weeks before negotiators from nearly 200 countries meet in Paris for a new round of negotiations aimed at reaching a legal agreement next year to end plastic pollution. Reuse was identified as the most effective measure to reduce plastic pollution. It could cut plastic pollution by up to 30% by 2040 by introducing refillable water bottles, packaging take-back schemes, and reverse vending machines. Better recycling could cut pollution by a fifth, and this could be achieved by removing fossil fuel subsidies and enforcing design rules to make items easier to recycle. An additional 17% cut would come from replacing plastics with alternatives such as paper or other compostable materials. Residents of Sittwe, the capital of Myanmar's Rakhine State, waited in line for rice and drinking water. The United Nations was negotiating with the military junta for access to areas that had been hit hard by Cyclone Mocha, which tore through Myanmar and Bangladesh on Sunday. The storm brought lashing rain and winds of up to 195 kilometers per hour, collapsing buildings and turning streets into rivers. Take a look.
မုန်တိုင်းနဲ့အကုန်လုံးအပြောပါသွားပြီဆိုတော့ဟိုရေကတောက်ရေကအရေးကြီးဆုံးပဲဆိုတော့တခြားဟာကကိုကြီးကရှိတဲ့လူနဲ့မရှိတဲ့လူနဲ့ကွာတာပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့ပြဿနာပေးဖို့ဝေလွှဲရတဲ့နေရာကြီးရယ်အဲ့မရှိတဲ့လူကြတော့အစလုံးမအစပြေဖို့ကိုအခုခိုင်ကဘာခိုင်လေးဆိုတော့တောက်ရေကခိုင်ကဆုံးပဲ
Now, the storm killed at least 81 people across Myanmar, according to statements given by local leaders and officials to AFP journalists and state media tallies. Residents in the Rakhine capital Sittwe queued for small tanks of drinking water after the cyclone stopped production at purification plants that supply potable water in the city of some 150,000 inhabitants. Hundreds of bags of rice had been airlifted to Sittwe and a naval vessel carrying rice as well. Negotiations with Myanmar's military junta for access to cyclone-affected areas were ongoing, according to the UN's Humanitarian Affairs Office. An OCHA spokesperson did not respond to questions on the discussions or whether access had been granted for UN teams to visit cyclone-affected areas, including camps housing displaced Rohingya. And Myanmar is indeed in the midst of a humanitarian crisis. The country has been hit by a powerful cyclone, and the military junta has continued to commit atrocities against the people. The Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar, Tom Andrews, said that the cyclone has had a horrible effect on extremely poor and destabilized parts of Myanmar. Take a look.
Mocha was among the, in fact, the most powerful cyclone to make landfall in this part of Myanmar. And what we're seeing right now is misery on top of misery. It has had a horrible effect on extremely poor and destabilized parts of Myanmar who have suffered so from horrific violence. And I'm talking about decades of systematic discrimination, genocidal attacks, and displacement. This village attack, we know, killed at least 160 people. According to the National Unity Government, nearly 40 of those who were killed were children. Only 59 people's remains were identifiable, with one rescue worker stating that victims' remains, and I quote, had to be picked up part by part and buried. This is yet another example of the junta's brutality and the probable crimes against humanity and war crimes being inflicted on the people of Myanmar. The Myanmar junta is using internationally supplied arms and associated materials to commit atrocities against the people of Myanmar. The Russian Federation supplied the Yak-130 aircraft and the Mi-35 helicopters and the ammunition that were provided, that were involved in this attack. These weapons and materials were provided directly to the Directorate of Defense Industries. Since this military coup occurred, led by Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, and that's 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, at least 3,500 civilians have been killed. At least 22,000 political prisoners have been detained. And at least 1.5 million people have been forcibly displaced.
Andrews concluded by calling on member states to deny the junta the three critical ingredients for conducting these operations.
Since that coup on the 1st of February, I have continued to remind member states that we can address this crisis by denying the junta the three critical ingredients for it conducting these operations. 1, financial support; 2, weapons; and 3, legitimacy.
On Thursday, the country will enter into a security pact with the United States, granting American troops access to its ports and airports. This is in Papua New Guinea. The move comes as Washington seeks to strengthen its influence in the region, contending with Beijing's efforts to win over nations through various diplomatic and financial incentives in exchange for strategic support. Take a look.
Now we're elevating to a specific defense cooperation agreement, something that is falling short of a treaty. And so this has been an ongoing work for some time. The conversation has been running for the last 5, 6, 7 years. We've now looked into the importance of USA, PNG stepping up in our own relationship. The shipwright agreement, for instance, allows for us to have a working partnership with the U.S. Navy and U.S. Coast Guard. With the U.S. Coast Guard, it now gives us an opportune time to have access, not just on maritime access, but satellite access to illegal fishing, drug traffickers, illegal loggers, and all those illegal transportations and activities that happens on high sea. Will not in any way stand to be exclusively used by the military. First and first, the assets will remain Papua New Guinea government assets. First right of use, Papua New Guinean use, including use for trade and use for public. And in the event they want to use it, they would always be asking our defense to have access to this facility. So all of this is done in pursuit to security domestically, as well as securing our sovereign borders, but again, does not stop us from relating to every other nation that has business and has bilateral relationship with Papua New Guinea, including China.
U.S. President Joe Biden has emphasized the significance of the Pacific region due to concerns regarding China's growing assertiveness. Prime Minister James Marape confirmed that the two agreements focusing on defense cooperation and maritime surveillance have been reached with the U.S. Once they receive parliamentary approval, these agreements will be formally signed at the earliest opportunity. But due to ongoing discussions related to the domestic debt ceiling crisis, President Biden had to cancel his highly anticipated visit to Papua New Guinea. Now, this decision holds personal significance for Biden, as his uncle lost his life in Papua New Guinea during World War II. Now, instead, Secretary of State Antony Blinken will represent the U.S. at the summit with Pacific leaders in Port Moresby. President Biden, however, extended an invitation to Prime Minister Marape and other Pacific leaders to participate in a summit in Washington later this year.
Conversation for me, it's really not about cash right now. It's about infrastructure, it's about security, it's about presence. And Papua New Guineans aren't beggars, will not go begging. But in every engagement, the spin-off in the economy is important. We've seen elsewhere where U.S. as a base, U.S. as a presence, the spin-off to the local economy is quite substantial. So,
President Marcos welcomed Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong's visit to Manila, hoping it'll enhance trade, security, and defense partnerships between Australia and the Philippines. President Marcos said that the two countries should work together to maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. He also expressed his readiness to work closely with Australia to respond to the current geopolitical situation. Ms. Wong conveyed Prime Minister Albanese's message to President Marcos, highlighting the need to further strengthen the two countries' strategic partnership. She also said that Australia wants to work with the Philippines for their mutual benefit, recognizing the importance of economic strength. President Marcos expressed gratitude to Australia for hosting Filipinos. He also said he looks forward to meeting Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese again in September. The outlook for a strong global economic recovery appears bleak due to persistent inflation, increasing interest rates, and elevated uncertainties. Rather than experiencing a swift rebound, the world economy is at risk of entering an extended phase of sluggish growth. This situation arises from the lingering impacts of the COVID pandemic, the worsening consequences of climate change, and unattended macroeconomic structural challenges. These findings are highlighted in the World Economic Situation and Prospects Report as of mid-2023. Take a look.
On the surface, there is some improvement in our 2023 forecast from January. global growth is now expected to be at around 2.3%, up from the 1.9% we were expecting then. And global inflation is projected to decline from 7.5% in 2022 to 5.2% in 2023. But behind these somewhat modest improvements lie less happy realities and their causes for concern. The scarring from the pandemic, mounting debt vulnerabilities, the dimming prospects for investment, and structural challenges that are still there, they raise the prospects of continuing subpar growth, which is deeply damaging for the SDGs.
Has prompted an upward revision of the growth forecast to 1.1% this year. The European Union's economy, driven by lower gas prices and robust consumer spending, is projected to grow by 0.9%. China's growth this year is now forecast at 5.3% as a result of COVID-19 related restrictions being lifted. But a somber picture remains.
Upward revision that we have achieved, we have seen, is mainly driven by strong household demand in the US, in Europe, and recovery in China. And this was rather unexpected. Household consumption spending remained resilient over the first quarter of 2023, and that led to this upward revision. But there are also some new risks that emerged during this since our last report, and namely the banking turmoil in the U.S. that has created some uncertainty or added more uncertainty to the system global economic outlook. The picture is divergent for countries. There's no one-size-fits-all here, and you'd see different paths. But overall, many of the developing countries remain extremely vulnerable in this environment.
Meanwhile, the global tourism recovery continued in the first quarter of this year, with an estimated 235 million people traveling internationally, or about 80% of pre-pandemic levels. Take a look. The United Nations World Tourism Organization said the results are in line with its projections for international arrivals to recover 80% to 90% of pre-pandemic levels in 2023. The Middle East was the only region that surpassed its pre-pandemic international tourist arrivals, growing by 15% in the first quarter of this year versus the same period in 2019. This was followed by Europe, which recovered 90% of pre-pandemic levels, Africa 88%, and the Americas 85%. Asia and the Pacific accelerated its recovery with 54% of pre-pandemic levels, but this upward trend is set to accelerate now that most destinations, particularly China, have reopened, according to the UNWTO. UNWTO Secretary General Zurab Pololikashvili said the start of the year has shown again tourism's unique ability to bounce back. However, she said we must remain alert to challenges ranging from geopolitical insecurity, staffing shortages, and the potential impact of the cost of living crisis on tourism. And we must ensure tourism's return delivers on its responsibilities as a solution to the climate emergency and as a driver of inclusive development. The Philippines is also seeing a strong recovery in tourism, with international visitor arrivals reaching 2 million from January 1 to May 12, representing 42% of the 2023 target. Finally, in our news, ChatGPT, the AI chatbot that can generate human-like text and answer questions on any topic, is now available on the Apple App Store. OpenAI, the Microsoft-backed company behind ChatGPT, announced the release on Thursday, saying that it came after hearing from users that they love using ChatGPT on the go.
In this case, it says it's not appropriate.
AI said that it is starting the rollout in the U.S. and will expand to additional countries in the coming weeks. ChatGPT will also be available on Android devices soon. OpenAI's release of ChatGPT to the public created a buzz of anticipation and concern over its remarkable capability to generate human-like essays, poems, and form letters and conversational responses across a wide range of topics. Users can interact with the chatbot by typing or speaking their queries. Although there is currently no indication that Congress will draft comprehensive AI regulations like their European counterparts, the concerns surrounding AI's societal impact prompted tech CEOs, including Sam Altman, to meet with the White House recently.
Number one, I would form a new agency that licenses any effort above a certain scale of capabilities. and can take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. Number two, I would create a set of safety standards focused on what you said in your third hypothesis as the dangerous capability evaluations. One example that we've used in the past is looking to see if a model can self-replicate and self-exfiltrate into the wild. We can give your office a long other list of the things that we think are important there, but specific tests that a model has to pass before it can be deployed into the world. And then third, I would require independent audits.
The issue of the moratorium, I think we need to be careful. The world won't wait. The rest of the global scientific community isn't going to pause. We have adversaries that are moving ahead. And sticking our head in the sand is not the answer. Safeguards and protections, yes, but a flat stop sign, sticking our head in the sand, I would be very, very worried about.
We're going to do that because
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the week on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.